Hi there! Welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your host, author DC Knipe, and this is The Writing Rainbow, the show where I talk about my writing, other people's writing, any kind of writing, blah 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 blah. And today I wanted to add on a little connotation asterisk kind of sequel video to my last video, which was all about look. I will have an annotation here so that you can watch that and catch up with me. Hold on, I need to clean my glasses. That didn't work. Oh well. Today I wanted to talk about Alice. Alice Liddell is apparently how you pronounce it. I've always pronounced it as Little. The titular character from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Also a beloved Disney character and Tim Burton character now. And there are many other adaptations besides that, but those are my favorites. So those are the ones I listed. And, as you know, I am currently writing a huge project about fairy tales and legends and mythology, adapting them all into one beautiful world that's dark and gritty like Game of Thrones, but also has magic. And my main heroine is going to be Alice. And her last name is going to be Little because I do not like how Liddell rolls off the tongue. And also, Alice Liddell was a real person, and this character that I'm writing about is going through a lot of dark shit, and I know that she's probably past at this point, but I just don't want to write about a real person in a very dark fantasy setting. It's just my, I'm not going to use Liddell, I'm going to use Little instead of Liddel, and it's going to be pronounced Little, obviously. If you saw my woke video, you will notice that in this project that I'm writing, I had planned on making Alice Black and American. Now, with that being said, I do want to preface this by saying I have read all of the Alice in Wonderland books. I have watched the Disney and Tim Burton adaptations a long time ago. But I recently rewatched the Disney and the Tim Burton versions, and I've been rereading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland from the beginning. And I realized I may have been wrong. The character that I was portraying as Alice was not Alice. Most of Alice's personality comes from being raised in Victorian London. I don't know if you can have an Alice that's American. I have watched one adaptation at least that I remember, of an American Alice. But when I look at her, she was only Alice by name and by plot. She wasn't the Alice. She wasn't the Alice that we've all come to love in popular culture. And I'm not just talking about Disney's version, I'm talking about the one from the books that Disney's version is based on. I don't think if I want to keep true to the source material, I can make Alice an American. It would be the easy thing to do because my culture is American and I live in the modern age, and making Alice a modern American girl would be the easy thing to do if she was white. I'm not black. I don't know much about black culture. So I don't think I'm the right person to write about a black character with a black family living in a city that I've never lived in. And I know this is the job of the writer to get in the headspace of the character, and I do that with all of my other characters, I promise you. The main character of my novel, Dream, is half black and half white. But the reason why I believe I can get away with him is because his story is based entirely on mine. His culture is mine. The novel Dream is a mirror of my trauma. I wrote it to deal with my trauma. Dante is very much me, just in a fantasy form. Alice is an already pre-established character, and I am definitely aiming to take these beloved characters and put a spin on them, not change the characters completely. It's different with my version of King Arthur and Merlin because they are very much the same character. They just happen to be gay and not religious zealots. Lancelot, in my adaptation of Kingdom Hearts, my adaptation of King Arthur and Merlin, is black. But he was raised in a British coded culture, a medieval British coded culture. So his culture isn't any... I do have African-based cultures in this adaptation that I'm working on of King Arthur, because it's a whole world with different kingdoms. So obviously I'm going to need like African-based humans and all kinds of Native Americans and all kinds of stuff. And I am doing research for those. With Alice, I don't see Alice. I can't see Alice. Now that I've reread the book, I can't really see her as any other race than white and British and Victorian London, because her entire personality and who she is as a person is based on that culture. And you can argue, well, yes, there were black people in Victorian London, but they were treated very differently than white women were. All women were treated shittily, but black people have always faced a much darker form of discrimination. And I feel like that would change her character as well. She would be a completely different character. All of this being said, the character that I did make, which was Black Alice, my original form of Alice, my original adaptation, is still going to be in the book, because I did fully develop her character and have a storyline for her. She's just not going to be Alice. But I did fall in love with her as her own separate character, so I'm not completely scrapping her, because I feel like this might feel weird to people who aren't writers, but I'm not sure why you would be watching this if you weren't a writer. When you write characters, you become attached to them, and I feel like it would be disrespectful to her. I know she's literally just in my head, but I feel like it would be disrespectful to her to completely abandon her and scrap her. As you can tell, this is unscripted. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there, but in a completely honest, forthcoming, forthright way, because I feel like it's an important subject, woke and race-changing characters. Because when you look at the surface of Alice, you see a very headstrong, intelligent young woman. My version was always going to be aged up. In the book, she's 7, I think. In the Disney animated version, she's 10, and the Tim Burton version, I think she's 17. She's going to be 16 in my version. But when you look at Alice on a surface level, you see a strong, independent young woman, and really you can place that into any race, any category, any time period. But when you get into the deep deep roots and mechanical workings of Alice as a character, you see that she's obsessed with things being proper and not being proper, and things being silly and not being silly. All of this comes from being raised in a very strict, proper manner, which I don't think happens in modern times. Not in the way that it did in Victorian London. All of her, how she reacts to things, what she wants out of life, everything always comes back to her being a Victorian girl in Victorian times in Victorian London. It's just how she was as a person, how she is as a character. And that is why I have chosen to not race bend Alice or bring her into the modern era. And I understand that this is a little shitty because I announced that she was going to be black and in a modern era, but I just don't see how I can do that and make it realistic. I really do honestly apologize. And that might speak to me as like a hindrance of my writing abilities or, me being afraid to try something new. If you want to read it as that, that's completely fine. But me, this is a matter of almost honor to me as a writer. I want to be as authentic as possible toward the source material. Now, that being said, King Arthur and Merlin are gay, and they are not religious zealots. So that is different, but I don't think religious zealots and them being heterosexual has anything to do with their characters at all. As well as my version of The Little Mermaid is going to be male and gay. That one's more personal because I've always identified as with The Little Mermaid, and I've always wanted to see a Little Mermaid story as a gay man. So I can take all the criticism you want from that. That has nothing to do with the character. It has something to do with the story. Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Little Mermaid as a love letter to a man. Hans Christian Andersen based The Little Mermaid on himself. So, if I believe fully that if The Little Mermaid was written in modern times, Hans Christian Andersen would have made the mermaid a merman. And the story would have been gay. That is just my opinion. So, that is the reasons why I am gender bending and making The Little Mermaid a gay man. I feel like I keep having to defend King Arthur and Merlin, which maybe I should read into, because if I don't really have a good excuse to make them not religious and gay, maybe I shouldn't write about them. My partner says I shouldn't write about them at all because he says that their story is toxic and very much Christian right and extremely hateful. Because apparently I didn't read this when I read through my research or watched the movies or read children's books about King Arthur. I still have yet to read the actual book of King Arthur, Le Morte d'Arthur. I'm waiting for it to arrive. It's taking forever. But apparently, according to my partner, I don't know if this is true, the Crusades, King Arthur's Crusades, although I'd only read that he went on quests, not crusades, they killed pagans. And I know some of the adaptations bring the Crusades into them, into the story, into the mix, in fantasy settings. Like in my favorite adaptation of King Arthur, Merlin, the miniseries, they're trying to get rid of magic completely. They're not trying to do that. Merlin's just like trying to stop Queen Mab, who is trying to preserve magic and fairies and all the like. And Merlin's only doing it because he literally just hates Mab. And that involves bringing Christianity, and when people believe in Christianity, they stop believing in fairies, and the fairies all die. But I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the original story or not. From what I read, the synopsis of the completely unabridged version, it didn't. And the stories that I read when I was younger, in high school, and children's books when I was a child, had nothing to do with any of that. It was just King Arthur and his knights and his quest for the Holy Grail, which happened to be the grail that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. But I've always viewed them, when I've watched or read about King Arthur and Merlin, I have always seen them as lovers about the same age. No matter what adaptation it is, I always see this sort of unspoken, unmentionable because of the times they're in and blah, 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 this love and desire for each other. Obviously not the ones where Merlin is like way ahead, like older than Arthur, and Arthur's like a kid. That's like the Disney version. That's obviously not the case. But that's just how I've always viewed them. And at the end of the day, this is my writing project, and I want to write King Arthur and Merlin as gay lovers, because I think that fixes some of the negative problems that are associated with the original story. Besides all the stuff that my partner says is in the original story, they were Christian, and they were trying to spread Christianity through any means necessary. That's toxic. That's kind of evil. That's just my opinion. And I do believe that changing this, it's a subtle change, but it helps. Also, there's no Christianity in my version at all. There's a spiritual religious belief, but it's not Christianity. Because, like I said, I view Christianity as toxic. And I think that by taking that out of the stories, it makes the stories better. You can disagree. You can agree. Whatever you think, it doesn't matter, because I'm still going to write it the way I want. But I still stand by what I said in the woke video, that not all woke race changes, gender changes, sexuality changes are bad. I still don't see an issue with Ariel being black, because again, I don't think being white or being black has anything to do with her culture as a mermaid. I don't see the big deal about the new Velma being race changed. My issue with them is that they're not the same characters. You can have a black Shaggy, just make him shaggy and kind of doofusy and love food. He can be black, but he has to be all that, and he's not. You can make Velma Indian, but she still has to be smart and nice and a little bit sarcastic, but she's not any of that in the show. She's evil and vindictive. We're not going to go into Fred and Daphne because we went all over that on the first video, but my point still stands. Some companies do woke casting for brownie points and for money, because they want that rainbow money, baby. That black money. But sometimes things are race changed for the better. Ariel was race changed, not even on purpose. Hallie was cast because she was the best fit for the job. She had the best voice. And the director said she had an innocence about her that invoked Ariel. And I agree with that. And again, Ariel is neither black or white. She's a fish. Anyone can play Ariel. But Alice is a Victorian British young woman or girl. And the storyline that I have for her, as dark and as horrifying as it is British and Victorian. Completely different from the modern Black Alice that I had, which didn't really have much of a storyline, again because she wasn't Alice. I could throw her in Wonderland, obviously, but I wasn't going to, and I don't really know why. I had already had that chapter written as the Black Modern Alice, and there was no Wonderland to be seen. She just met the White Rabbit, and the White Rabbit took her to the fantasy world, which is not Wonderland. So I'm not sure where that was going, but it wasn't good. I think I just got really excited about putting a twist on it to make it interesting, and again, sometimes that happens. I'm glad I caught myself before I finished it. I'm still going to use her character, and she's going to show up later in the series, but she's not going to be Alice. And I feel like I am just rambling at this point. My partner got me this doll for Valentine's Day. I don't know how he found it. I had been looking for it last year because I realized that the Disney store made them at one point, and they were gone. They were completely fucking gone. And then today in the mail, this came in, and I was like, how the fuck did you find her? And he was like, I have my ways. So it was witchcraft, I'm sure. All in all, Alice is an established character. She is British in the Victorian era. The things that she believes and goes through in the Victorian era is that of a white woman in the Victorian era. She never dealt with racism. She never dealt with any of that. She never dealt with misogynoir, which is misogyny towards specifically black women. That would change her character completely, I'm afraid. And so my version of Alice is no longer going to be black and in the modern era. And I do apologize for anyone that was excited about that. But that's just how I want to write it now, and that's how I feel as if I can do the right thing. And I know that sounds ridiculous because it's just a story, and I'm not trying to make it a big deal, but how I respect the original story, this is how I bring Alice to life. It is a completely different case than King Arthur and Merlin and The Little Mermaid, as I have said millions of times before, and I am rambling. I'm going to cut it off now. I love you guys, and I hope I didn't upset too many of you with this video. I love you. You can catch me on all the social media at author DC Knipe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.